Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of Contact Loss, the best Polish English speaking podcast about 40k out there. I am your host, Tweak, and with me I have my co host, Joker.
Hello. Sorry we're late. It's a new low for us, 11 minutes, but we've had some technical difficulties this time. It's not my fault.
Yeah, it's our guests. We're not inviting them again. But since I've mentioned the guests, let me introduce the two people that we invited for our today's episode. The first one, Bakłażan, that you may know from some events in the UK and the WTC and the Polish national team. Welcome, dude.
Hi. Hello.
Hi, good to have
Also
you.
apparently known as Blaise.
Yes.
Yeah, true that. Okay, and our second guest, the voice of whom should be familiar to you already because he did feature in our previous episode when we were discussing, I think, one of the data slates previously. I give you
Yes.
August. Welcome.
Hello there.
Yay, his volume works. That's the most important part. We were trying to figure this out for 10 minutes, and he's connected through his computer, through his mobile phone, and God knows what else, but let's hope it works.
Yeah. Guys, if the audio is crap, please let us know in the comments. We probably won't be able to do anything about it, but at least we'll know.
But at least we will know. So we have this merry ensemble here because today we're going to be talking about a topic that we've been sort of um, showing you and teasing for a couple of weeks, but circumstances wanted us to talk about something else, so we did. But today we bring the topic of toxicity. So toxicity in our community, toxicity at events. Essentially, we want to focus on playing on. Sorry, we want to focus on competitive play and the challenges that stem from it. I think that this is a topic that doesn't get enough attention. However, I've seen multiple posts in different places on the internet, be it Reddit, some forums, Facebook, what have you. Very important posts, and some of them, I'm going to bring up some of them, and I'm going to read portions of them because I think the messages in them are quite important. And then we're going to sort of on one hand react to them, but also we have our esteemed guests who are known for being referees at events, both international and Polish events, and yeah, we're going to check if they have any hints or any pieces of advice on how to tackle those situations or how to tackle players who are, let's call it, lightly difficult at the table. What to do, how to behave, how to react. Do you need higher authority to help you, or can you manage this on your own? Is it enough to be assertive, or do you need something else? So, without further ado, I think we can get to it. Bakłażan, maybe let's introduce you a little bit to the community, to the people who haven't heard your nickname or don't know who you are. Um, what do you what do you play? Why do you referee? What events have you refereed so far?
Okay, let's start from the latter.
Uh-huh.
I guess I'm most known from WTC. I only refed one WTC so far, but hopefully I'm gonna be back there this year. I also refed LGT and 2023, I think. Yeah, it was
Mm-hmm.
23. And whole lot of Polish events, including all of the Polish team champs since 2022, I think. What do I play? Unfortunately, I play Drukari, so it's hard to say I'm playing. Oh, I'm not playing that much, but yeah, Drukari and GSC at the moment are my main armies. Well, Drukari is already deep down in my basement because I took it to the Krakow GT and got completely destroyed.
Oh, so
So
sad.
yeah,
All right, so
and
GSC it is.
yeah, for now it's GSC. And why do I ref? Well, it's a how to say it. I enjoy being at events and community side of the events and meeting people more than I enjoy playing.
Interesting.
So that's one of the ways that you can
Punish yourself.
go. Yeah. Also, yes, but you can attend events not as a visitor, but as a someone who actually has something to do there and not play.
Yeah, fair.
So that's one, and yeah, that's mostly it. And now it gives me a lot of opportunities to, WTC is pretty cool, I think,
Mhm.
and being invited to, I don't know, London to referee event is quite nice, I guess. So that's why I think.
Yeah, it definitely has its upsides. All right, so you have both the player's perspective, the referee's perspective. That's exactly what we are looking for. August, how about you? What events have you refereed? Do you enjoy doing it? Um, ever had any unpleasant experiences with that, perhaps?
Okay, so I am refereeing the game for about a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
I started refereeing at my own tournament where I was a referee with Blaise August, and just trying to help them.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then the players started telling me that it was good, so I was started to being invited to referee the tournament in Poland.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. And what do you play?
Uh, there's a lot of armies that I play. Mostly now Thousand Suns because nobody plays them.
Okay, so the underdogs, es- especially, I imagine.
Yes, and also I can just stand there and think what will happen, and I just see the clock ticking.
I get you. I'm in the same boat, sort of. All right. Um, let's jump into some of the questions that I essentially gathered from all over the internet, and we're going to start with something fairly soft, and I guess it's going to escalate later. So we're not going to start with toxicity per se, but maybe just how to step into the competitive world. Do you need any preparation and so on? So one of the questions that I found on the internet, and it's a surprisingly frequently asked question. This comes from Deep Space 9 Inches on Reddit, and the question was, how long did you play 40k before starting tournaments? I got into 40k in November last year, played 16 games so far, and I think I've got a decent grasp on the rules and I know my list pretty well. I don't really have to look up stats very often anymore. I'm thinking of entering Sheffield GT. My question to you all is, how soon did you get into tournaments? And Joker, I guess we'll start with you because you didn't do your introduction. So, is there the right time to start playing competitively, or like you should start as soon as possible? What was your experience, and did you have any regrets?
Well, it's more of a whenever you feel ready. So whenever you have, an army you can put on the table and you feel confident enough that you can go and enjoy the games regardless what happens, which I think is actually quite crucial to keep in mind, then you're ready to start playing, right? I mean, from that point on, it's all a massive learning curve, which you have to or you will begin at some point. I don't think there's an exact point in time when you can consider yourself ready. Just go and see what it's like,
Okay,
and then evaluate if you're happy with the experiences you've had.
all right. August, would you agree with that?
Yes, I will. I started playing tournaments, local ones, a year after I started playing at all, because that's when I found out there were tournaments near my place.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, I'm asking because my experience was totally different, but again, maybe that's just my road, uh, but or my path. But I started playing and I picked up Drukhari back in seventh edition when they were horrible, and I think I've told the story many times. I had like a 27 games in a row streak of losses, but the people in my local community, after I came to like two, three local RTTs, like no more than 12 players, they told me, oh, in September there is this local big event that people from all over Poland are going to come and join, and you should come and enjoy it with us because it's like a celebration of the hobby, blah blah blah. and it's going to be like 60 or 70 players, so you should come and see what real tournaments look like. And I did. And I got my ass handed to me in a horrible, horrible, painful way, to the point where I left the event close to tears and wanting to sell my army. Um, and from my perspective, it does feel like you need some sort of preparation before you go to a GT, because GTs are huge. They are packed with players who are focused on getting to the top, or there is a portion of players who are focused on getting to the top. And if you're unlucky, you might actually face those players and not have the great time. If you're looking for like leisurely time, well spent, fun time, this might not be the best place to look for such experiences. Bakwajan, am I right? Am I wrong?
Well, it depends. What do you expect from the tournament, right?
Hmm.
Because well, my way was my first true 2000 points game was at the tournament, and I played like a Polish national team member for my first game, so I obviously lost in 2 turns.
Hmm.
But that was what I expected, right? You need to remember, if you go to a GT, not an RTT, that it is a competition, right? So you are not going you are going there to have a nice time, a good time, but it not not exactly leisure.
Yeah, you
It's
need to ask
competition, right?
yourself the question, what gives you fun, I guess.
Yes, exactly. So
Yes.
there is a high possibility that you're gonna lose.
Hmm.
So it's at least 50%, but if you are just starting, it's probably a lot more.
Yep.
And you need to be ready, mentally ready. And as a judge, I have to say that having a grasp on the rules is very important.
Zero surprise.
No, because it gives you confidence also, right? Because when you're not sure if you are even playing correctly, like in rules wise, then how can you be confident in your game, like tactical wise and so on?
Yeah, that's a valid point. You don't want to be your biggest enemy at an event.
Yeah, and you're gonna be
Yes.
for many months probably,
Hmm.
and that's yeah, the extent of it is
Yeah, I mean,
not it, right?
I wholeheartedly agree. Especially, yeah, when I was playing Drukari, the state of it was that I had a small child at home and I couldn't really go and play frequently. Actually, I never left the house apart from a tournament that happens maybe once a month. But I knew that if I went to the tournament, which was like 3 games a day, I would get in 3 games in one day, and then that would be enough, for a month until the next tournament. But the problem with that was, even though I built like 10 lists or 15 lists before the tournament, when I got to the event, since I haven't played for a month, I forgot all my rules. And I needed to check the codex. I needed to, check Wikipedia or whatever was there at the time. And exactly what I said, I was my biggest enemy because I didn't know my rules, not to mention my enemies or my opponents' rules, and it was just an uphill struggle. So I would say at least get familiar with your army before you go to a bigger event, not to
That
have regrets.
I would say that that's a point of what you expect from the event.
Hmm.
Because, for example, there's one anecdote that some people from the Polish national team, in this year also me, we went to the Polish team championships of Age of Sigmar
Hmm.
with absolutely no games before. We just copied the lists from the top of some big tournament a month earlier.
Hmm.
We just try to read the rules or not and just ask the opponents in the first round what they are and try to see how well we will fare in the game.
Uh-huh. And how did you do?
And I have to say, that's a great fun. But like going there with the expectations that this is just fun, we don't know what we is going, and we will learn everything on the spot.
Right, but we're just ignoring the fact that you are very good 40k players in the background, right?
I am not
Yeah.
a good 40k player.
Bottom line, it's all about the attitude, right? You need to be like exactly aware. You're probably not going there to win this event if you're going for
Right.
the first time.
Yeah.
You're going there to like get familiar with the rules, with your army mainly, and with the the tournament setting, so to speak.
Yes.
So again, managing expectations is the first thing. Like if even if you're good in your like local RTTs, let's say, in your local meta, if you go out of your bubble and go out there to a different city or a different scene, you might be surprised because people play something else. There are people who are better. Yes, let's admit there are people who are better than you, and they might kick your butt. So managing expectations. I think that's a good place to start this podcast with. Um, Now let's move on to a different thing. Um, and again, Joker, I'll use you to explain exactly what that is, uh, because many pro players, actually, right now it's not even pro players. It's I think everyone who plays competitively repeats like a mantra to play by intent, and that playing by intent is the best thing in the world. It helps avoid conflicts, blah blah blah. What is that magical intent, and how do you play by it?
Well, essentially, you just keep the conversation going during the game. So you're saying what you are doing, but not only like I'm moving this guy here. You also add to it why you're doing that. So I'm moving this guy here to see that guy. You confirm that I can see that guy. Well, and then if the opponent confirms, then you're all set, right? You're avoiding having the discussion later on when it's maybe not the best time to have it, like in your shooting phase, and then you're like, well, I would have done my whole movement differently if I didn't see that guy. So that's all that kind of thing. So and like or stuff like saying, well, if you charge here, I will definitely heroic with these guys. So even if we forget that at a later stage, you know that you've stated what you want to do. So in case you don't react quickly enough, because during the game you might start doing things
Hmm.
maybe not super precisely, get carried away with something, and then you're like, oh, my whole plan was based on this. So playing by intent, you can avoid such sticky situations.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So you can,
It
with
also
go on.
helps when positioning models in like boundary conditions. So exactly, for example, 12 inches from the opponent, when there are some movements on the table, somebody bumps into it, the models move around.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good
We
point.
know how they should be positioned.
Hmm. All right.
Yeah,
So
that's a good one too.
so agreed. So I think there is agreement among us that playing by intent is generally, in theory, a good thing. So Bakwajan, I need to ask you the question. There are players who, or no, let's turn it around. Can playing by intent be used to excuse laziness? Because like many a time, I play people online who say, until I say, and this is supposed to be playing by intent, until I say otherwise, my character who has three different auras, he will always have this aura. Is that just lazy play, or is this actually playing by intent and something expected?
This situation, this specific thing, I would call lazy, but oh well. Like
Thank you.
playing by intent was designed to avoid misunderstandings, right? To avoid feel bads and gotchas.
Hmm.
And telling that, oh, my Gilliman is always doing this until I say otherwise is just being lazy. It's not an intent, but obviously it works, right? Like we know why it happens. Like that's fine. It's also being lazy if you are like, oh yeah, those guys are just standing somewhere here. Yeah, yeah, we know that they are standing here and just dropping models all around. That's also laziness, right?
Hmm.
But I do it also. Like everyone does it. So yeah, sometimes it's just lazy, obviously.
Okay, so I have another like situation, and this is from Reddit again, from user Hendrik underscore Yusuf, and that's his story. He says, "Yesterday I went to a 90-player tournament with my devotees of Ned. In my second game, I played against an Imperial Guard player running a Bridgehead Strike. He looked like a pro, wearing his team's T-shirt, which is also a big Warhammer 40k YouTube channel. Before the game, he told me he was going to give me a speech he always gives to his opponents. Basically, he said he wanted to play by intent and be communicative. No big deal. I agreed. Then the first round began. I moved my striking scorpions closer with a scout move, and he said, "Of course you want to move closer so you can teleport incon, you jerk." That kind of uncalled for hostility was upsetting and annoying, but I didn't react. Fast forward a bit, he used the stratagem on my position, hoping to kill my incubi, but he failed to wound me and instead killed his own squad. I then asked if that meant I would get 2 more points for no prisoners, and he replied, "Oh yeah, you'll get it." So I take it back. That was a dumb move. And then he dials back his CP and proceeds. What do you think about that? Is that still intent, or is
No,
it?
that's weaponizing intent and blatant cheating, honestly.
All right, explain. Weaponizing intent.
So, at least how I understand it is that in such a situation where something seems obvious or that's what you should have done, you say that that's what you intended to do.
Hmm.
So that's like using the play by intent in a way that it just gets you out of situations that you put yourself in
Hmm.
through not being careful enough, not being precise enough.
Yeah, I think that's a good definition. But I also know that it happens very frequently. Unfortunately, people do tend to
Yeah,
weaponize it.
definitely. But there is like a fine line. I mean, some things might be obvious that obviously you wouldn't put if you're putting your unit behind a ruin
Hmm.
and well, you're moving them fast and there's one sword of a guy sticking out. I mean, obviously you didn't want to do that, right? Especially
Uh-huh.
if you say it whilst moving the unit, okay, I'm putting these guys here so you can't see them. But if you move same unit in a way that you want to be closer to an objective or a charge or something, and then later on it turns out that half of the unit is visible, that's pushing it a little bit.
Okay.
That might not be the best of examples, but it's the first thing that came to my mind. So maybe the guys have something better to share with us
So maybe before
in that
before they do,
category.
so let me just draw another example because the guy continues with his post and he says,
Yeah, I've read
then
that one.
then at the end of the turn, the same player claimed that his science could score behind enemy lines since they were in my deployment zone. I measured and saw that they actually were just outside of it. He then said the reason he had asked if he could deep strike 6 inches away from my wave serpent was to ensure they would be in my deployment zone. At that point, I just said, "Okay, have it." Um, so Bakwajan, August, we know what playing by intent is. We sort of know, thanks to Joker, what weaponizing intent is. How do you deal with weaponizing intent? Is there any way you can draw a line or any way you can
Okay.
put a stop to this?
First of all, the first situation it was just cheating. It's just
Yeah,
like the take backs after you saw the result.
Mm-hmm.
It
results of
Yeah,
rolls.
it's not an intent. It's not even close.
Okay.
So yeah, that's a one thing. And well, playing by intent is well how Neil Kerr, the previous head judge of WTC, then ETC, always said it's a game for a gentleman, right? That's how we should approach it, and but that requires two people with that attitude, and sometimes you just can't play by intent if your opponent does not um, well, his attitude is not perfect for that, right?
Right, but not everyone has the, how to call it, the mental fortitude or
Yeah, I
just
understand.
the assertiveness, right, to
Well,
stand up to that other
unfor-
guy.
Yeah, unfortunately, this game is social and requires communication, and being assertive is kind of required if you want to succeed, if you want to
Okay.
have a good time also. Because sometimes sometimes it's only like question of, well, you say to someone once that you do not agree with what he does and he stops. Sometimes it's just that's all it takes.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people are testing you. Sometimes people are testing you unknowingly because, well, that's what they do. Sometimes it's knowingly. um, so unfortunately you need to learn to communicate clearly with your opponent, and also learn how to make them communicate with you, because you also need to understand what they mean by doing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If someone is moving the unit, maybe ask them what they mean. You saw in this example the player that was making a post. He knew that his opponent had behind the lines, behind the enemy lines.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he saw the unit. Maybe he should have asked in the movement phase, do you want this unit to be in my deployment zone?
Since you have that mission or something
Yes,
like that. Yeah.
exactly. And
Mm-hmm.
then measure it. And then he can. That there is a moment when he should alter his movement or deep strike or wherever. Uh, People hesitate of asking stuff like that. Do you want to do that because I can overwatch you? Do you want to do that because I can whatever? Because they feel like they are having an advantage
Or revealing the
of,
strategy or something.
yes, yes,
Mhm.
because someone forgot about something and you want to reap the fruits of them being
Of them
misinformed,
forgetting, yeah.
yeah, or them forgetting. Yeah, that's also bad. You shouldn't
Mm-hmm.
do that. This game should be about like chess, 100% open information. Everyone knows everything,
Mm-hmm.
and then you do decisions based on that. Of course, if someone forgets something and two turns passed, well, that's on them. But you shouldn't be like strengthening it, and uh, you should ask your
Mm-hmm.
opponent.
Yeah.
Of course, you sometimes also do not realize, right? Because, well, he can forget something, you can forget, but do not make it your
Ace
uh
up your sleeve or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
All right.
not that's not cool.
Okay. August, what's your approach to generally to take backs? Like, are take backs allowed? Should they not be allowed? And then, is there a line that we draw of how far take backs can go, like per phase or per role, or how do you approach that?
I think there is a line that isn't easy to specify.
Hmm.
For sure, it depends on the decision points that are happening in the game. Whether the decision that you would have taken depends on the roles that would come after. Because if there's anything that could affect the decision that was random or being reacted by the opponent,
Mm-hmm.
then it's a little bit too late. Especially if we are talking about a really competitive game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If we are talking a game in a friendly atmosphere, that we are together talking what we could do both, then yes, obviously we can do something more.
Agreed.
I know that now when I'm playing Thousand Sons, we could have a lot of rules that stack together,
Mm-hmm.
and there are still opponents who hasn't played against them in this edition. Sometimes I am asking them or telling them what I will do, or even showing them and asking if they are certain with their decision, for example, to put their model there.
Mm-hmm.
But I play mostly for just playing or educating people and not for like winning. So my attitude is a lot more laid back in regards to my opponents.
Yeah, I think more people should adopt that attitude, to be honest. But yeah, I think it's a good approach. But you've touched upon something, and Joker, I'll ask the next question to you, based on August's reply. Um, have you ever been in a situation where I think someone just fell over?
Sorry.
Outside. The
No worries.
telephone fell off.
Yeah.
My
So
keyboard, but
Tripod
yeah.
or something.
yeah, we were close. Joker. So have you ever been in a situation either on the receiving end or well the other end where your opponent asks you, "Do you know what my army does?" And then this is used as, "I don't have to explain my rules to you because you just said you do." And then in the game, it turns out that well, you not really, you don't really know the rules, and most of the things that your opponent does are now gotchas because well, you don't actually know the rules.
Um, I think I've been in all these kind of situations.
Uh huh.
Um, I don't know if there's like a follow up. Is there like what to
No,
do
I
in those
mean,
situations
yeah,
or
how you go to events to play competitively, but in a game that has I don't know how many factions, 16 or something like that. Obviously, you're
20
not,
something?
or
24.
yeah, even better.
Yeah,
So
and almost all of them are playable. So this really, I mean, people were hating the fact that the game's been simplified, but if this many factions were playable with like seventh
mm,
edition rules, it would be impossible to play the game. You'd always have the conversation at the beginning of the game, regardless. So even if I know the army, if I'm like against custodies and we've played for 6 weeks in a row, against each other, so I
mm,
know everything that's there, I usually still keep asking questions about rules. Like, okay, you've had a reactive move. How did that work? Obviously, whenever that situation might pop up, and usually I'd probably ask my opponent to just skim through the rules anyways at this point, and also do the same with mine,
hmm.
even though sometimes it's I dread it because it's just too much talking
Well,
in
yeah.
a short
i-
space of time.
If you
If
have
you've
limited
got
time during a round, then yeah.
all the possible different characters with all possible different enhancements, etc., etc. But yeah, I mean, it just helps, right? It's you're reminding both yourself and your opponent of what can happen on the table, and it's only beneficial to the both of you. So it's just worth having that couple minutes of conversation, and it usually shouldn't impact whether you manage to finish your game in time.
I mean,
Because
yeah,
if
I agree. But I think you shouldn't really take shortcuts in well in anything that you do, but especially if you go to a tournament and you play a game and your opponent wants to explain his army to you willingly, don't say no to that. Mainly because, well, one reason is what Joker said, but the other thing is, even if you've played, like Joker and myself, we've played GSC versus Custodians, like, I don't know, 15 times. So Joker knows Custodies rules pretty much as well as I do. But then if you go to a tournament and you meet a new player who plays Custodies, it might turn out that that guy actually has been misplaying his rules all the time because he thinks that the reactive move is not d6 but just flat 6 or whatever. Last Saturday we were at an event and there was a player playing this new Custodies Lions of the Emperor detachment, and well, he was playing it, but he had this enhancement to stand up on 2+, and he was convinced, like dead serious convinced, that on 2+, he needs to roll for the amount of wounds that his character will have, while the detachment or the enhancement says that you just get full wounds back. And he would have played it to his disadvantage. So I told him at the right moment, read that again, go and check because I think it's different. And yeah, the game went differently because he realized that the rule was different than what he thought. So yeah, if you can, don't take shortcuts because it might play to your disadvantage. Actually, I hope we all agree. So I'll ask another question, and Bakwajan, this time to you. This is uh, another question. Unfortunately, I don't have the name of the user, but the question is, where do you draw the line on pointing things out to your opponent? And the question is thus: I just played my first 2,000 point game against a guy from my local store that I've had smaller matches with before. I explained to him that I was trying to get into more competitive 40k, and he offered me a game. In the past, there were some issues with him, giving himself extra movement and hidden dice rolls, blah blah blah. Before we started, I made sure to clearly explain what my army does and specifically mentioned that I had units in reserve that could deep strike. Fast forward to the event, the big issue happened when at the start of the movement phase, he moved a group of units off an objective. Seeing the opportunity, I used rapid ingress at the end of his phase to bring in reserve unit and to take control of that objective. At that point, he tried to take back his movement, arguing that I should have reminded him about my ability to do that. I pushed back, saying I had already explained it before the game, and he got frustrated. Who is in the right?
Well, that's a hard question, right?
We don't ask easy questions.
Uh, where do you draw a line? It's completely personal, I guess. I'm like August, so I'm not really playing to win any tournaments anymore. So I would probably ask him if he really wants to move off this objective, because I might take it. Um,
So you're of the kind that would even go as far as to reveal your strategy
I
just to make
would,
sure. Yeah, okay.
uh,
Yes.
but it's not required. I'll if it's like a 100% not exhibition but friendly game,
Mm-hmm.
uh, then I would even more. Obviously, I think you should, but uh, at the tournament setting, if you are competing for the win, you don't have to. No one should be taking it as, I don't know, a bad play, bad sportsmanship if you don't.
Mm-hmm.
If so, it depends. That's that's the answer. But on the pinnacle of competitive play, or even just at the local GT, RTT, wherever, it is not punishable by anything. It's not even a bad taste or anything to not remind someone of this kind of situation, in this kind of situation. But I would encourage to do so.
Mm,
Maybe not if you are, I don't know, member of national team for WTC, because then you would like, there is an understanding that there are best players in the world and they shouldn't forget stuff like that.
mm-hmm.
But they also do sometimes.
Yeah.
We've seen from, I think it was last Polish team champs, we had a live stream. Yes, it was. Yes, and
Hmm.
Kark played a player from Team Germany and forgot about unit in Deep Strike and let it deploy in his deployment and lost because of that. So it happens, but
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Like, it's not like Skark was angry on the opponent or for not reminding him. If he was
Mm-hmm.
angry on himself for not remembering it, as he should, um,
But
yeah, but it was fine.
last
Like a
week,
root.
Mm-hmm.
Skark even remembered that he can use rapid ingress.
Yes, that's it's only year
And
two of the like
That's fifth
end of
edition.
year two of the edition, so that's about
maybe if
time.
he used it, maybe he will remember that it exists.
Yes, yes,
It's
Yeah,
probably
but
high time.
that's the perfect example.
you leave Lularum.
Something's used against you, yeah, at such a moment that you just so painful you remember it for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, learn the hard way, as they say.
Yeah, exactly.
But this is probably the most memorable stuff. So one other thing that it happens at events and could call feels bound to new players, I guess, is when your opponent, you come to an event, you're playing your first game, and then your opponent whips out his clock and says, "If you don't mind, let's play with a clock." Uh, August, what's your approach to situations like that? So, one opponent, you have a freshman coming to an event, and then another seasoned player who wants to make sure that we fit within those 3 or 3.5 or 4 or how many hours, and he puts the clock on the table and sort of asks or imposes playing on the clock to the other player. Is that common at tournaments? Is that welcome at tournaments? How do you treat it as a referee?
Okay, so for the most nowadays tournaments, playing on the clock is actually required. If both players agree, they can play without clock, but then they're at a disadvantage if they run out of time during the game for both
Mm-hmm.
of them. So playing on the clock is actually something good unless the opponent weaponizes the clock. So, for example, we know that managing the time on the clock is the duty of both the players. So,
Mm-hmm.
if the seasoned players just clocks his out time so that they play on the opponent's time, that's a really bad
Mm-hmm.
behavior.
Yeah.
He should, when playing with clock with a new opponent, he should uh, try to help them understand how to play with the clock.
Mm-hmm.
Remind him that he should clock back to the other player, and have a little bit of understanding that
Yeah.
it is new for the other player.
Yeah. So I need to ask because I was in a similar situation, and now I don't know if this was weaponizing the clock, whether it was cockiness, whether it was something else. But I was at GT in the north of Poland, and my opponent, an experienced player who like played at international level, at some point during the game, he was like, "All right, I put the clock on me. I'm going for a smoke. You do your movements, blah blah blah. While I'm gone, I completely trust you." And then he just went away, had a smoke, came back after 5 minutes. In the meantime, I felt so uneasy about actually doing the movements and so on because I wanted him to see. I didn't want him to have any doubts about my movements, even though he said he trusts me. So I was standing there for 5 minutes, considering whether I should move, whether I should do rolls to myself because I didn't have witnesses to see the rolls and so on. Um, is that putting an opponent at a disadvantage, or is that sort of behavior that is common that especially an experienced player says, yeah, I trust you, do whatever, I'm going to be gone for 10 minutes. um Joker, have you been in a situation like that? Is that something that happens often, or was it just him being cocky because he knew he was way better than me?
I no, I don't think so. I mean, I don't know who you're referring to. That would make the question easier if he was being cocky.
You know him,
Uh,
but I'm not saying.
but I really don't see any problem with that, and I'm afraid that the guys might correct me now. But I often do, or maybe not the same thing, but when it, after the first round and I see what the game's like or it's going to be like, the interaction is what's it going to be like. Then if I need to go to Lou, for example, and it's the open movement phase, and I'm just gone, and I tell him, if you finish your movement, put the clock on me. So good, like
Hmm.
it's my problem,
So this is common.
and
Yes,
It
I
is.
don't see any problem with that,
Hmm.
Yep.
honestly.
You cannot stop the clock, so if you are gone, the best thing is to put it on yourself.
Hmm.
Well, he cannot make you do your movements during his time, but you have a possibility. You can wait, right?
Hmm.
It's his time that's clicking out, so it's on you. Yeah, but it's
Okay.
common. It's common, and that's how it should be.
Okay. And then what happens, Bakwajan, well, you have the mic, let's say. What happens in a situation, and again, I'm leaning more towards like a situation where there is a new player at the event,
Yeah.
and a clock is put on the table, and it comes to a rules dispute, and one player claims one thing, the other player claims another. They need to resort to the rule book or the codex and actually search for the rule and so on and so on. How is time sharing approached in this situation?
Well, if it's a big GT and so on, you should probably just call the judge. Judge can stop the clock.
Hmm.
He probably will if it's really something that you need to check, or judge will check and let you do some other things if it's like other combat somewhere else that you can resolve in the meantime and so on.
Mm-hmm.
If you are just two players, well, it's hard because it again depends. It's probably i- if it's thing like I'm asking Joker, do you have any stratagems that you can use? And he is like, oh, let me show you my stratagems. Then it should be on me because it's me that asked the question. I want to know something, and it's my clock now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that's on me. If it's like let's measure something and we cannot agree, then there is no good way to resolve that other than calling the ref.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we are there. Like
Okay.
it's like 5 years ago when there was one ref of 70 people. It's probably impossible. Now it's usually more possible, right? And fortunately, it's not that long, right? If you see that it's more than like 20, 30 seconds and you cannot uh, reach any agreement, call a judge, or
Mm-hmm.
even call a person next table that you both know of or you both don't know, and to see if there's a line of sight stuff or wherever.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's sometimes another player is just enough, right? Because it's just on the edge, so you cannot resolve it. Ask someone else, preferably a judge, but
Okay.
it's not mandatory.
But I've heard players say, or like I got this sense from some players at GTs, but also at smaller events, that calling a judge is sort of the last resort. And some people don't even want to do it because if they ask a question that is fairly basic, they might even get punished for it. Does that happen? And
I wish.
it, uh, so August, maybe I'll ask you this question: Are there, because the saying goes there are no stupid questions, but are there limits to that when you approach the judge?
No, I don't. Unless they are about the game.
Uh
Like,
huh.
if you are asking me what I'm going in the evening, it's
Obviously,
a little bit too much.
right. No, but if someone
But
asks a
whatever
question
is
about,
the rules,
right.
if you're asking me if you can use the barricade fighting through walls when there is no wall, it's okay. You can ask that.
Mm-hmm.
I may
Okay.
laugh at you later, but you have the right to ask.
Right. And then live with the consequences afterwards.
And
Okay.
it is very good to ask.
Mm-hmm.
It's better to ask than do something wrong.
Yeah, and regret. Agreed. Okay, that's a good one.
100%. I
We
mean,
are there and we are bored there and we are waiting for your questions. If you
Yeah,
don't ask us questions, I will go and talk to you or something.
I was expecting
yeah.
something more explosive, but okay.
Well, that's the worst that can happen. They just
Yeah,
come and pick a conversation with you out of nowhere.
and they
Yeah.
weaponize the clock by talking to you on your time.
Exactly.
All right,
Exactly.
Joker. I
No,
need to ask. Yeah, go on. Sorry, you wanted to say something.
I was gonna say, I mean, I play a fair bit. I wouldn't say I'm a rules expert, definitely, but I've even had the last GTA I went to, I had a situation where someone interpreted the rules, well, my opponent interpreted the rules completely differently, and I was like 110% it was wrong, but I was so dumbfounded by the interpretation that I still said, okay, let's call a judge to
Mm,
make sure that it's resolved properly. So they didn't punish me, they didn't laugh at me yet, so I
they
think
just
We
the
laugh
did,
behind
effort
your back.
always
but
worth
yeah,
doing. Oh yeah, well, you didn't need me to ask a question to laugh behind my back, I'm
that's
sure.
true.
So
Yeah.
Y-
But, well, there is a WTC rule that maybe made
you're
this
fine.
whole rumor for being punished for asking questions, that repeatedly asking a judge basic core rules questions will affect in a card, and it probably might, but you would need to be really annoying and repeat it like several times around, then maybe.
So
But
you really have to earn it to
yes,
yeah.
yes, like don't push it. Just
Hmm.
if you forgot how fly works in charge phase, ask. I will check it because I don't remember as well. Like
I remember it because once I ruled it wrong, and then I just spent like 5 minutes looking to the app because I thought that I ruled it wrong because it was stupid.
yeah,
And I find out that I ruled it wrong. So I remember.
yeah. At last, Pyra, we couldn't find with German coach and French coach. So we were looking three of us were looking at the app to find where is a rule that forbids you from moving through an engagement range of enemy models, and we couldn't find it.
Hmm.
And we're like, it has to be there, but yeah, it was, but somewhere else. But it happens.
Yeah, even to the best of us.
Yeah.
Um, right.
Uh,
Uh, Joker, I guess I'll go with you this time. Setting rules at the beginning of the game, like approaching the table and saying stuff like, "Let's agree that all the dice that fall on the train, we reroll them, or that all dice that are cocked, we reroll them." So imposing sort of your own rules at the beginning of the game, is that healthy? Is that unhealthy? Welcome, unwelcome.
I think it's healthy to have that conversation.
Hmm.
Like, that's it. That's the full answer.
Thank you for your input.
there,
Moving
there,
on.
there, there isn't really anything to discuss, in my
No,
opinion.
but
It's
like
just worth doing.
if someone came to you and started imposing a rule at the beginning that you felt uncomfortable with, or a rule that you just don't follow in your friendly games and so on and so on, and that caught you by surprise, like, let's reroll every die that is not on the dice roller or something like that. Is that something? Do you accept that? Do you challenge that, or do you just go with the flow?
I mean, if it's not something that like really bothers me, then I accept it. And I'm not a very conflictive person, or at least I like to think that. So I'm usually good with most things. Yeah, if someone has their little quirks or something, then it's all fine as long as it's agreed before the game. It's all good.
Hmm.
If it's not, then it's. But that's the whole point, to
Hmm.
have the conversation, set expectations with your opponent, how you're going to play the game, how you're going to interact, and 90% of the problems that we'll experience would probably be resolved that way already.
Yeah, going back to that topic of takebacks and so on, probably if you explain that at the beginning of the game, it will be easier later on as well. Like, if it's a take back within a phase, that's acceptable. But if we've already gone to shooting and you want to correct your movement or something like that, that's going too far or something like this. So yeah, agreed. Good. I have one more, two more actually, things to bring up from posts that I saw on the internet, and this is by Foxy Blaster One about his GT experience, and it goes like this. And I needed to cut this up into pieces, so I'm not going to read like a wall of text in one go. But my experiences of GTs up to Manchester Super Major and the extra skill you need for competitive play, managing awful players. Manchester just ended, and it confirmed something I learned from my previous GTs, that you need another skill for competitive play, so managing the other awful player. They come in variety, but the main one is the overly competitive player who isn't as good as he thinks he is. They are usually focused on winning, they'd much rather win than have a good time, and they are awful to play. Mainly as you cannot trust them as far as you can throw them. Have you had experiences like that where you met a player who was awful at the table, the game was unpleasant, and you just were counting minutes until the end of the game? How do you manage situations like that? How do you behave? Bakwajan, let's start with you.
Obviously, obviously, unfortunately, I hope I'm not this kind of person. But you never know. Um, yeah. Well, how I deal it with it is treat the game as PVE.
Mhm.
Just
Yeah.
yeah, do not like if you see that guy's not vibing with you, just just don't like. inform him of your moves. I'm assuming he's not cheating, right? Because
Mhm.
that's completely different part. Like if he's cheating, call a judge. If he's doing stuff that if he's moving additional 2 inches every time, mention it for the first time and then call a judge. If he's using his stratagems incorrectly, call the judge, etc., etc. It's not in a bad taste. If he's gonna be like not angry, but even more passive aggressive towards you after that, so be it. He wasn't nice to you in the first place, so it's
Mhm.
kind of on him, right? Uh, if you're not, but if he's not cheating, if he's just very competitive and he doesn't want to chit chat with you, or you're just not vibing, just don't. Maybe that's how he goes, right? Maybe he's a very stout person. Like maybe he doesn't have a sense of humor. Maybe you don't know.
Mhm.
They are also allowed to play the game, and just treat it as playing with someone who, I don't know. It sometimes happens, right? You always play it. You play it in a, I don't know, football with someone who's not that cool, and it happens, right? You need
Mhm.
to. It's not the best experience, but you're gonna make it worse if you by pushing it.
Mhm. All right. Uh, August, the guy so the author of this post continues and says, common things that you'll spot in those awful players are moving an extra inch or two, failing to take out all their failed rolls before moving on in the attack sequence, not telling you what they are doing, and then another example was like hurling dice and expecting me to know what the results were, and so on and so on. Do those situations, those examples, is that enough to call a judge to your table and to ask the judge to maybe observe the game for a little bit, or is that already crossing the line and is that going too far?
Yes, that is enough
Mm-hmm.
for sure. Moving more than you are allowed to is just plain cheating.
Right, but
Other
then,
things that
hmm,
okay
no, 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 go on.
could be talked with the opponent, like for example rolling the dice and seeing the results. First, we can communicate to them.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe for them it is enough. I am often seeing that I am seeing the dice rolls faster than my opponents,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just, if they are rolling, I'm just standing there waiting. But I understand everybody has other speed,
Mm-hmm.
and this is something that you can talk about. That, sorry, can you just roll slower? I have to see process what is going on.
Mm-hmm. Right, but
Also with other
doesn't
things like that.
doesn't that immediately set the tone for the rest of the game? That you're sort of indirectly telling your opponent that you don't trust them.
Mm,
I wouldn't call it that.
Uh-huh.
I wouldn't say it's trust, right? Right? I mean, it's like I want to be up to speed on what's happening. If someone's going too fast, I mean, is there something wrong in calling them out? I don't think it's calling them a cheater right away,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Just, mate, sorry, I'm not in the same zone as you. Slow down a bit so that I can see what's going on and understand and make informed decisions as well. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I wouldn't be offended if someone said that to me.
Yep. It's
Okay.
a question of attitude, right?
Yeah.
If the other person is like positive, has a positive attitude, then they're gonna accept it. That maybe I'm moving too fast. I'm pretty sure I'm often moving too fast for my opponents. It's not that just because I'm so cool, but just because I'm ADHD. So and especially now when there are like reactive stratagems, reactive moves, rapid ingress, and so on, you cannot move too fast. You need to communicate again. Unfortunately, this game is PvP, and you need to you play with your opponent, like not only with a table. It's not a fifth edition anymore when your opponent could leave for your whole turn, and that would be cool.
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
So I think there is something that I coined the term because we have weaponizing intent, weaponizing the clock. I think there is also something that could be called weaponizing confidence. So like when you have a player who is a seasoned player who knows exactly what he does and so on and so on, very often that player can just overpower, so to say, the other player with his confidence. Because I, to tell you the truth, if I were at an event and a let's say a player from the Polish national team or like a well-known podcaster started doing something dodgy, I don't know if I would have the guts to call him out just because what I said earlier, I would be under the impression that if I do, I'm going to sort of subconsciously send out the message, I don't trust you, so I'm going to be watching you, and so on and so on. And this would like completely spoil the atmosphere of the game. But maybe I'm the only one.
Well, probably not. Like it for sure happens. We see it. Like the not only newer players. It's not all. It's not only like the. Uh, it doesn't come from an experience or so on because when you play, like it's mostly like I don't know how to call it. Maybe like a charisma or like a personality. Some people have a big personality on the at the table. Um, well, you need to get used to it. I
Mm-hmm.
guess like it's like with every interaction with other human being. Unfortunately, some
Mm-hmm.
people are using it to their advantage, and well, it's like in like I don't know poker. Like it's not only a numbers game. It's
Mm-hmm.
also bluffing, etc., etc. In 40k, maybe you have 100% clear information on everything. You should, but there is also element of psychology, bluffing, and you know, and stuff like that. And that's also part of a game, and you need to, unfortunately, maybe get used to it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Joker, a question to you again. Have you been in a situation where like your opponent was very close to the barrier of cunning versus sly, let's say, and then how did you handle it?
Well, I mean, just have to call them out on it, really.
Okay.
In most cases. So I wanted to comment on that Reddit post because it's also one that I've read. Seems like a lot of those popped up after Manchester, although not all of them
Mm-hmm.
like referred to that event itself. Just kind of started some sort of spiral. But
Or after Scari's game against Imperial Guard at LVO, I
maybe
think. Mm-hmm.
whatever. But the thing that I don't like about that one is that it is a boost. It's like it's true in a way. It's also a bit vague. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if this situation keeps happening to you, and I know it's politically incorrect to like blame victims, but maybe you're also a part of the problem. So, like in the example that you've used, where you'd say you wouldn't have the guts to call out an opponent, well, that's you're allowing someone to ruin the experience for you.
Yes. I think there's a
Like,
thin line because on one hand I'm allowing them. Yeah, I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean.
probably, but like Bakwaja mentioned earlier, right? You need to have some sort of assertiveness in you in these situations, and that's all it takes most of the time. Because often I've played people, if I measured their movement once, it was usually enough. They'd
Hmm.
they'd then be more careful with it as well, more precise. And again, I could leave the table, come back, and nothing would have been dodgy.
Hmm. Okay. Um, and then one more question that I have, and again, I was in that situation, and I was actually the bad guy in that situation. So there are games where at least it seems for some time that nothing goes your way. Um, for me, more often than not. And there are games in which I, what's the expression? I let my bad uh, attitude get the better of me. So I had a game. in a TTS league where the dice roller was just shite. And my opponent had only fives and sixes. I had only ones and twos, like a big mental shortcut, but that's essentially what it was. And I became very bitchy about it, like during the game. And obviously it wasn't my opponent's fault. Um, but it didn't stop me from complaining. So at some point, like mid game, he was like, "Dude, you're making this very unpleasant for me," and I just wish this game ended as soon as possible because it's not pleasure to play. So then I became like very apologetic, and I offered him a walkover, or like a whatever the expression is, 20-0 to him, which he also denied, and he said that he wants to play this to the end. And once he said it, the tides have turned, and now he started rolling ones and twos, and I started rolling fives and sixes, and it actually came to the point where I won this game. Um, he called me out. I apologized during. I apologized after. I even wrote to the organizer of that league and asked to punish me for my behavior because I felt so bad. I felt so miserable. Would you call out a player who moans all the time and tell him to essentially calm down? How do you diffuse a player like me? How do you diffuse someone like that during an event? Do you even attempt to? Or do you just let him moan and do your thing and finish the game as soon as possible? August, I'll start with you.
Okay, so there's a certain point that I think that this is a hobby that we go to unwind a little bit from the stresses of everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
But there certainly is a point that complaining about what's happening is a little bit too much.
Yep.
For start, sure, there is just talk that maybe it's a little bit too much, that maybe we can tone down
Mm-hmm.
how we are approaching the game,
Mm-hmm.
how we are approaching what is happening. We can communicate that it is unpleasant to other players, other
Mm-hmm.
attendees, that it makes bad experience that we are hearing the complaints and only this in the negative way.
Mm-hmm. All right. Bakwajan, your take?
I mean, uh, we've had situations when people were just throwing dice and so on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So unless it's really annoying to you, I wouldn't say anything. But it's kind of depends if you know the player you're playing against
Mm-hmm.
and what's like the overall state of the game. Because sometimes it's just best to leave them alone, let them like steam off. Because you can only make it worse sometimes.
Yeah, they could
uh,
get even more agitated.
yeah, I don't think there's like a one for all solution. For sure, if it's like not only moaning but also like being disruptive for the game and for everyone around, call the judge because I can also talk with him as a judge.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but in general, it's like in real life, right? If you see someone frustrated and for good reason, there's not much you can do really.
Mm-hmm.
He's frustrated, and he's gonna go through it and probably be better. If he doesn't apologize at the end, well, that's on him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just I know it's easy to say, but just don't let other people affect your experience too much. Just turn it into PvE again.
Mm-hmm.
Tell him what you are gonna do. Play as normal, and that's it. Like you don't have to console him. You are not his girlfriend,
Okay.
unless you are. Then maybe.
Fair.
I assume
Fair
you are
point.
not.
Fair point. Joker, I know you need to run in about 10 minutes, so I guess we're going to be bringing this episode to a close. Let's take some final pieces of advice and so on and so on. So, dealing with toxicity, competitive play, one piece of advice that you have for players to, I don't know, diffuse other players dealing with toxic opponents and so on. Something that you do that you can recommend to others.
Well, I don't have one. I have two,
Even better.
probably. So, first of all, have a conversation with your opponent. This is like this game is based on talking and exchanging information about what's happening, what you want to do, etc., etc. And if that doesn't help, you call a judge. Simple as.
Hmm. And the second piece of advice, or that was two in one.
That was the call a judge was the second piece of advice.
Thank you. All right. Okay. August, do you have any pieces of advice?
I think Joker had great advice.
Hmm.
I would give it to. Also, like talking with the opponent, how we are approaching the game, what is our expectations at the start is a great way to start.
Agreed. Okay. Bakwajan, something from
Um,
you.
well, there's not much to add, but yeah, communication is key. And if you communicate well with your opponent, it's gonna be it's gonna go well. If you are not, then there might be difficulties. And also just remember that it's a game that you play for fun, and that should probably solve many of your problems.
Yeah. Agreed.
And if you are not having fun, maybe just in this particular game, maybe just quit. I don't know. I sometimes do it. I played. I quit my last Drukari versus Eldari games round 2 when I had like still most of my army intact because I knew it's not gonna go well.
I actually did the same in the last tournament that I went to. Third game, it was we knew our team wasn't getting anywhere, and the game was just exhausting. I just told my opponent, "Yeah, take 20-0 because I don't see myself doing this until the end of the game." So thank you, sayonara, and that's it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think it was better for both of us. Um, yeah. Okay, Joker, do you want to walk us out of the episode, perhaps?
Yeah, definitely. So, guys, thanks for tuning in. Thanks also to Bakwajan and August for participating and their insights. A massive thank you to our sponsors, Weyland-Yutani and the Army Painter, as well as our community of Patreons. If you like what we do, like, subscribe, hit the bell button, consider becoming a patron or YouTube member. Both work. And yeah, we'll see you in a week's time, or so I hope that
We definitely will.
this is back regularly.
All right, well
And
done.
thank you to my co-host Week, who was actually more of a host this time and prepared the questions, did the research, did all the Reddit reading, which I despise and try not doing unless someone links me a post directly. So kudos to him for doing the toilet cleaning.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Join us next week. We'll prepare something interesting, definitely. See you then.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye.